Let's get this going. That is the show.
Oh, I gotta do an intro and everything like that.
You're doing great so far.
You have to.
I want to
Hi.
be professional.
But you all shaved.
I know I'm all pretty. I got pretty for you,
Thanks.
but just for you.
He's talking to you, Mike.
Oh, okay. Well, I thank you, Jason.
Oh, you're very welcome. I wanted to feel the. I didn't want scruff on scruff. I wanted smooth on scruff when we gently glide our cheeks past one another.
That's
Face cheeks or which?
Whoa,
Yes.
it's saucy early
The
on.
answer
Tom.
is yes.
Because there would be scruff on scruff with the other cheeks, right? Oh,
The
no.
answer again is yes.
Too much
You
scruff.
always amaze me with how clever you are, Tom. I appreciate it.
so. Are we recording yet?
Yeah, we've been recording.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Fantastic.
okay. So I guess best segue would be neoliberalism.
All right. Is that like the Matrix? Oh,
Well, it's a good light conversation about how things exist and whether things will continue to exist. Did anyone get a chance to view the TED talk that concerns the dark side of capitalism?
No, I did not. I'm sorry.
Yes.
sorry.
All right. Well, fair enough. The main point of it was just a quick synopsis. A 1%, not just a 1%er, a 0.1%er who has decided to favor changing the mechanisms that had made him as such. And I guess it's probably some form of guilt or responsibility to society that he thinks he and his ilk do not deserve their wealth. So he wants to see a more equitable future.
Oh, is it
And
for everybody is equal?
no, not quite, because that's sort of the question. I think everyone here would probably agree that capitalism is probably the best system we've had in generating wealth for anyone in the world, but it's could potentially have some drawbacks that we might be able to fix. Is that a fair assumption?
I think so.
Yep.
I think it's the most living form of government. It changes, or economy rather.
Yeah, I mean, like any economic system taken to its end, it can kind of get a little dicey, right? That's why we have antitrust, anti-monopoly laws, things along those lines.
And yet
We're not living in the fountainhead or anything quite yet.
Yeah, quite yet.
we still have monopolies. I mean, we don't call them that, but
I do.
But I will say,
The tech monopolies that we talked about like 3
yeah,
weeks
yeah,
ago.
I know.
but
Did you watch that episode, by the way? Okay.
Yeah.
If you walk into a grocery store in a capitalist country, you can find a lot of options. And if you walk into a grocery store in a Marxist country or a other dictatorship, totalitarian, iron-fisted, probably can't find Gruyere cheese as easily as you can. So it creates more options for the populace when you have a market-driven economy, and that's what I like about it. It's more options. But
I'm gonna fix my legs.
Yep.
And I think if you think back to some of the socialist countries, so let's say like the Soviet Union up until 1989, can you think of like some major inventions or innovations that they came up with under socialism? Because it seems like capitalism, you get a lot of inventions. People keep kind of pushing forward and driving computers and newer cars and better cars and cell phones. But what came out of socialism? Do you remember any like big inventions?
Um,
Because I don't think
well,
there were
it
many.
depends on if you, I mean, the Nazis were socialists and they did invent a whole lot of new
Yeah, they were good with the
technologies.
rockets. That's true.
But the
But
thing,
for the most part, I think capitalism is going to be the economy where, just by the nature of it, the businesses are trying to create something new for the consumer. That kind of drives that cycle.
You're absolutely right. And that's in the video is pretty much the feedback loop that he mentioned as what powered that um, is the innovation, the opportunity for innovation, and then the consumer demand would select out the preferred innovations and lead to greater conveniences and better quality of life. Yeah, so that's pretty
Well,
much
it's
right on the
also
money.
the thing, and it's sort of like the Walmart dilemma or whatever. The other thing with capitalism, and I guess it could be a knock on it. It's not always what's best, right? It's what's enough for the least amount of money. So it's not necessarily when you go to a store, you want a pool noodle, right? You don't. There may be someone that makes an absolutely fantastic pool noodle that costs $20, and it's the best pool noodle ever. But you don't want to spend $20 on a pool noodle. This one's enough, and so there's some of that too, right? And so it's not like it's always the best. It's what's best for the market, not necessarily what's the best product by itself.
what I might say to answer Tom's question, from at least from my point of view, is that okay? So no, they didn't produce socialism. Didn't produce products. We could say that the arts, um, writers, ballet, athletes, that they had cultural contributions to the world. Whether we agree with their politics or not, that they did have, some of the greatest ballerinas, ballet dancers are, out of, Russia. Um, Tolstoy, there's good arguments
Hmm.
for what they provided to the arts. But then again, that lends to the fact that they didn't have anything else to do. So,
I think, I mean, like a lot of countries, like most countries, and Zeus and I were talking about this before you guys came on. I love human beings. I think human beings are freaking amazing. And the Russian people in the history of Russia, they are a proud, strong, accomplished people. Their government has sucked ass big time, over time, and has oppressed them. I would say the Russian people have achieved, despite their government more than anything. I mean, it's like when we talk about China, and we always qualify that. Like, I don't think anyone on here has a beef with the Chinese people. Chinese people are freaking amazing. They're like the oldest society on the planet. I mean, they've been around for thousands of years. It wasn't until Mao tried to erase that. But their government blows, and I don't know. I always find that it's a canard. It's sort of like a red herring when people start turning these political discussions into like some sort of personal, you
Right.
hate Vietnamese people or something. Like, that's never what it's about. It's never what it's about.
All right. Well, before we get too much further into the weeds, I have a couple quick questions. I'd like to just sort of review the question we had last week about perceptions on corrupt states, and just sort of reiterate what we said, like what we believe the top one and the bottom one were.
Find my papers.
If you recall, or just come up with one right now. And like,
It
I
was
think I said
Russia.
I think I said the least corrupt was Singapore, and the
Yeah.
most corrupt was, what did I say? I forgot. Probably China. I think
I
that's
think
what I
you
said.
said China. I think you said
Yeah.
China.
Does anyone else remember what they had?
I want to say,
Russia.
oh, I'm sorry.
Russia was most corrupt, and gosh,
I see. I know that I was leaning more towards like your Algerias, your Yemens, your countries that are just they're war zones. It's warlords. You know, you could say the Sudan. Um, I mean, honestly, all of them are. You find me a country that's not corrupt. Even like your Swedens and Switzerlands, there's still people in high-ranking positions that take advantage of that and maybe don't oppress on the level of, say, even in, like in America. I mean, call it what it is. But they're all there's corruption everywhere. It's a matter
I
of
mean, corruption, the roots of corruption are when you have a system where there's people that are in control who don't have a check on them. That's you have to have that. And then corruption is the natural progression from that. So in a say a government like China, where even though I think like 1 out of 10 people belong to the Communist Party, which is astonishing to me. I thought it was much higher than that. But if it's not 10, it's like 15%. It's not a majority by any stretch.
that's huge.
That those people are the ones that are in positions of power or are able to influence power, and there's not really a check on them that's from outside the party, then that's a you know that's a fertile ground for corruption. And same thing in Russia, which is more of an oligarch kind of society where if you're not in government, you may be on the approved list as a business person or what have you, and there's no consequence or accountability, then that breeds corruption. But if you're in a system where people are elected and come in and out of power or don't hold power for that long, it's hard to be corrupt. It's harder.
All right, so let's switch over then to economic freedom. Which country do you think has the most economic freedom?
Well, what would be your definition of economic freedom?
Economic freedom would sort of be, and the point is there are actually lists for this, organizations that come to put lists together, but economic freedom is the highest form of economic freedom, provides an absolute right of property ownership, fully realized freedoms of movement for labor, capital, and goods, and an absolute absence of coercion or constraint of economic liberty. So part of what they're looking are property rights, lack of corruption, fiscal freedom, government spending, business freedom, labor freedom, monetary freedom, open markets, trade freedom. So who's at the top of the list there?
I'm still going to lean to like your Sweden, Switzerland's, Norway's.
I'm going to say the U.S., man. I mean, that's why most people are coming here.
I think we got a lot of that here.
We have people coming.
% of the United States is federally owned.
But I'm saying you can still own property.
But my point is you can't just squat and take up land. So it's not.
No, but you can. What you buy, you own it, and for the most part, they can't take it away from you.
Eminent domain. If they need to build,
that's why I said for the most part. But
that's the exception.
That's huge, dude. That's not just like a for them. And I'm busting your chops, but that's not a for the most part kind of situation.
But every government would have that. And they're not abusing it willy-nilly and just kind of, I don't like Trump, I'm going to take all of his property.
Tell that to the guy that drove the tank, the murder tank in, I forget where it was, like Texas.
Zeus, those are, I mean, I would say, I'm just looking at the fact that people go out of their way to try to get to the United States. It's been the story since before all of us were born.
That doesn't make it
well
better.
Before that.
It just makes it better.
But there's a reason, right? They're leaving somewhere, and their perception is that it's better here. And it's not perfect, but I think the U.S. offers a pretty wide opportunity for people.
I'm not saying any of that's not true, but what I am saying is that again, about
where are there the most billionaires?
The United States is federally owned lands that you cannot just go build a house on.
No, but you can buy land. There's still plenty of land to buy in the United
That's where all
States.
that land's gone. I'm not. It's not an argument of we're bad. It's just an
I'm
argument
not
of
saying,
we
yeah.
might be. We're not that much better when you look.
What is Sweden or Switzerland
Yeah.
doing?
What's
I
Switzerland
we're not
offering?
you never hear ill at all anywhere about that region. You know, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland.
As far as economic prosperity?
But economic prosperity is good there. I know I've heard that over and over, and they seem to be doing pretty well with social medicine, like a lot of things. I mean, we could probably learn from them. But again, it's not knocking America. It's just saying let's. It's more of a keeping it realistic thing. Again,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just my.
States.
I mean, I was the one that put U.S. as the most corrupt country, so I'm not like, you know.
Right.
Anyway,
I think
I'm
we're
just saying.
fighting the same fight here.
I just don't see people trying to go other. I'm not like seeing people say like, "Man, we need to go to Norway." Like, I don't see that. I don't see that at all. You know, I mean, I gotta.
So
gotta look at-
how about wealth inequality? Wealth inequality. What are some of the highest that you think are there?
is wealth disparity inequality, or like what
Yes.
is wealth inequality?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. It's part of the problem. Virtually any source is going to have to define exactly what they mean by wealth. And a lot of times they'll end up confusing income with wealth. But wealth is larger. It includes income. It includes financial assets. It includes land holdings.
The big thing that we have in this country is there's certain rules of economics that you just can't get around. One is whatever you tax, you get less of, right? So in our country, we decided sometime, early 20th century that we would tax income, and everyone's like, okay, we tax income. Well, and you always hear Warren Buffett, oh, my secretary pays more in taxes than I do. It's like, because we don't tax wealth necessarily. I'm not saying we should, but taxing income is a fraught thing, because once you get to a certain point, you're not making your bones on your paycheck, right? You're making your bones on your investments and things along those lines. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, the old adage is, when you need to get a job, do you go to a poor person and ask them for a job, or do you go to a wealthy person and ask them for a job? I mean, it's kind of a necessary evil to an extent.
Right on time.
So
Speaking of necessary evils,
so my answer on that would have been like Saudi Arabia.
that's one family like controls everything in that.
Yeah. So as far as inequality, yeah, I'd say that's probably, that would be my go-to. Or again, if we're gonna be honest, we got to talk about your Yemens, your Algerias, where there's no records being kept on all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Jack.
What's up, Jack?
What's up, guys?
How you feeling, Jack?
I feel good, man. I just I fell asleep after dinner.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Good dinner.
I'm good.
We're on
feeling-
wealth. We're on
Sorry,
wealth inequality.
Oh boy.
Tom, what country you think's at highest inequality?
I think Zeus had a good point. Those oil-rich countries, I think, because the ones that are taking in the money from the oil, but what's everybody else got?
Right.
Just sand. So there's got to be a huge disparity there. So probably those sorts of nations where there's very limited resources.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there's a big disparity. I mean, there's a disparity, of course, between Bezos and the regular American, but I think there's wealth. The wealth of the average American here compared to the average guy in Zimbabwe or the average person in Cambodia or wherever, pick any other country, and it's going to far outweigh anybody else around the world.
All right. So just reviewing the indexes, the Corruption Perceptions Index has as the least corrupt nations in order: Denmark, New Zealand, Finland, Singapore, Sweden, Switzerland. It goes on, Norland. Yeah. And at the bottom, the most corrupt are pretty much what you did guess.
Saudi Arabia, Russia.
Venezuela, Haiti, Iraq, Sudan. Oh, wait, I'm looking at the wrong list.
So
Where'd it
again,
go? I'm sorry. South Sudan, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Venezuela. Exactly.
Yeah, it's places where we can't get real info from.
Where there's a shortage. When there's a shortage on goods, you're going to have corruption because people are going to
It's more
slide
than
an extra bit of money over to the guy in charge to make sure that their family gets a bag of rice.
But it's more than that. It's two or three of the countries that he mentioned. Yemen is like it's like terrorist training camp country. So is Algeria. Sudan is warlords. I'm surprised Somalia didn't show up on that list actually, because
well, it's on there. It's just not at that very bottom.
All the pirates and all. Yeah, so a lot of these countries, yeah, of course, they're corrupt because we don't know anything about them. I mean, and that's
well. They also, the one thing those countries all have in common is they have a tightly controlled, centralized power in the government, right? They're not
from go.
They're not democracies or
I think
republics.
there's different kinds of corruption, and I don't know what that list was basing it on, but think of a country like China where they sort of allow the software piracy and the piracy of movies and music, CDs and everything. They just let you copy. I mean, that's a huge piracy, and they just it's kind of like government allowed, corruption. And Russia with the things they're doing with the,
China's 78.
Their number's 78.
Yeah, US is 25.
Wow.
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
everybody knows.
I don't know what their definition, what their guidelines are, but there's different types of corruption.
Absolutely.
Like state-sponsored corruption, like when you're assassinating your, political, counterparts. That's.
Anyone have the 411 on this Haiti thing? Like, I looked it up and I was like, man, this is horrible. And it sounds like that guy had some issues himself. But anyone have any info or insight on that situation? Just out of curiosity.
Papa Doc.
No, in Haiti, the guy that just got
Dominican Republic.
assassinated.
No, but isn't that where Papa Doc was? They've always
I think
been.
that was Dominican Republic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was the Dominican.
Papa Doc Duvalier.
Yeah. I was going to say, again, back to the corruption. I mean, I think I would imagine this list is based on just overall corruption. Because another thing about China, people don't realize this, but I think most of you know Kirk. I think Jack's the only one that doesn't know Kirk. But Kirk traveled around the world on a boat, like by himself. And besides Somalia, like around that region of Africa, the worst place to take your boat when you're circumnavigating is the
South China Sea.
China, yeah. Piracy is rampant there. It's like nobody goes there. They own it. They own their land and then the ocean. Anywhere within their region. Like people literally go as far down as they possibly can to avoid all that.
They were like surrounding some island, not Taiwan, but some other island. They would just take all these like fishing boats. Well, a lot of them are like military. They called them fishing boats. And they would just surround this island. Say, oh, this is our area here. They're trying to pressure these people to hand that land over to China.
And I'd very much like to clarify again, because we do bring this up a lot, China, and I'm not pointing this at the people, because if people are listening, I want them to know I'm talking more government, that it's not the people that are doing this. I think the people are probably not too cheery right now. I think they like things different with the social credit thing that they've got going on right now. Sounds horrible.
I don't know. That's good you said that, Zeus, because I think we're huge in China.
Yeah, we had like 60,000 views in China.
We're massive in Russia. No, but we have.
I got like 10 yen coming in every day.
I have at least one person
on my Cash App.
China,
Yeah.
So I just want to be kind.
I got you.
All right, jumping to economics. Just going to run through these real quick. Top 5: Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, Switzerland, Ireland.
For
And then, it goes on. US is at 20 on the economic freedom index. And for wealth,
Singapore, gosh.
wealth inequality, so wealth disparity, 1 to 10. Netherlands, Russia, Sweden is 3, US is 4, Brazil, Thailand, Denmark, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, and Indonesia.
Wow.
So there was a paper that noted that although that is somewhat surprising, again, it has a lot to do with how you measure wealth, but it was plotted out versus wealth inequality versus prosperity. And there's something of a correlation between wealth inequality and prosperity in nations. And it's comes to a lot of the points, comes back to what capitalism is, and distinguishing between wealth and distressed states such as poverty. When you have a wealthy state that is, or you're a wealthy individual, that is not the same thing, or you're measuring wealth. That doesn't mean that there are people who are impoverished. If there's an unequal level, it doesn't say anything about the well-being of the people at the lowest end of that spectrum. It just says that there's a disparity and nothing more than that. So then you have to explore a lot of the other issues to determine what exactly is going on. But using that as a standard by which to say a society is bad or we ought to overthrow our economic system isn't a very well-informed approach.
But aren't you going to have that great disparity whenever you have a booming economy and you have like super rich magnates like Bezos and Bill Gates and those guys, because they're super, super, super rich because they happen to be here? Is that the disparity that they're looking at?
Absolutely. I mean, those are right. All the politicians love to bring up the richest, most hyper-productive people in the world, in the country, in history. They gained collectively, whatever, trillions of dollars in 2020 alone, or whatever the number is. And well, how much total money is there? How are people living still? It could be bad, but it is their fault. And most of it is just the value of their shares in their own companies. Something like the top 400 wealthiest people in the world has been measured since 1980, and they say that only about 20 and change are still on the list, and they all tend to be entrepreneurs. It's not it's not
so isn't that a benefit then that we have? It's
yes,
putting us on the list, but it's kind of a bad rap, I think.
What are you smirking at?
Because I was sending a message.
He's goofing off. He's not paying attention in class.
I'll smack your wrist. I'll smack something else.
The other thing with wealth inequality, it's like one of those terms that it just makes me scratch my head a little bit. Like, are we talking about, I'm digging a ditch and the guy next to me is digging a ditch and he's making $20 an hour and I'm making $5 an hour? Or are we talking about I'm digging a ditch and another guy's like creating the new concept of like electric automobiles and PayPal and designing rockets that can get reused? And I'm like, this is inequality. Like, I mean, what are we talking? What is how are you measuring inequality? I mean, I want people who are innovative and have that drive and can work. I want them to make, who doesn't want them to make more? They're making things better, in my belief, for everyone in the long run. And if they're not, right, if they're just like destroying the environment, hey man, when you make Tesla batteries, it's like killing people. Okay, then we'll deal with that. But I mean, that's not what we're talking about. The idea that someone's making more than me doesn't bother me. I'm okay with that.
Oh man, I said not at all. That's the whole thing. The capitalism isn't perfect. No,
that's the dream.
But if everybody's the same, there's no drive. There's no inspiration. There's nobody wanting to get. There is no greener grass on the other side. It's all the grass is green.
When you hear people say things, and I'm not picking on like teachers unions or educators, but I hear it from these people and I've heard it from these people. where we need to build Johnny's self-esteem. You can't. Like, you either get self-esteem, like, it. You're not given self-esteem, like, you earn it. And this whole idea that we can make people feel better, it's a lie. I mean, it's such a lie. I mean, it is hard work. You have to, I don't know. You guys all know. I mean, you achieve what you can. You get pissed off and sad for what you don't achieve. You try something else, or you're like, you know what? I got enough. I'm comfortable. I'm just gonna sit in my beanbag, and that's cool too, man. Like, do what you want. But
So how do you feel? And this is coming back to Zeus saying we might be able to learn something from European nations. How do you all feel about the statement as a comparison? It may have been in the video that the European nations are all capitalist, right? There's anytime some AOC or Bernie Sanders says they are democratic socialists, that's not true. They all say they're capitalistic free market economies. But the contrast between us and them is they have they have market economies. And the concern for our system is that we have a market society, and that we aren't we're trying to rely upon the market in economics as a solution. Can just let the market take care of it. Whereas they are using the market to generate their wealth and then apply it to their societies. Is that something that would be favorable? Is that are we going to be suffering long term? Is that why we're suffering currently?
I think it comes down to like political ego, in that China says, and again, not beating up on China, but China says, we know what's best. Here's how everybody's going to do it. Whereas we are more like I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. We're more like our government is more parental, and you can't do that. You can do this. If the one kid is doing well, you help them to rise up. If the other kid's not doing well, you help them. You don't change the household for them, but you should give them the means to be better. But it still all depends on their drive, on whether they're going to try to achieve or not. I got two boys. They could both go to prison, or they could both go to college. I'm gonna, if one of them's in prison, I'm gonna start focusing a little more on the college kid. You know what I mean? I love them.
Or have them become a lawyer. Yeah.
Right. I love them. Yeah. Redirect their talents. You know how to avoid the law. How about trying to work with it? But yeah, so I'm big on capitalism. I think it is the best way to do it. But you have to have a bottom, or you don't have a top to reach. It's like, that's the biggest part of it to me is if you have these governments where everybody's just everybody gets the same, it just doesn't make sense. What's the point in it all?
It's not human nature.
No, it's not. I mean, and again, we're raised here and we're comfortable with it. So maybe there's something that feels comfortable to.
Wait, what do you mean by human nature?
So human nature is, if I'm going to put X amount of effort into something and get Y reward, right? That bargain needs to make sense for me as an individual. The second that is skewed, or that I don't feel I'm getting the reward, the cost benefit, then I'm gonna pull back. I mean, that's human nature. I'm not gonna go out and work my ass off and not get what I feel is a justified return on that. I'm not talking about like whatever you do. If you go out and farming, right? I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna farm, and I'm gonna get some return on that or whatever. If I do it year after year after year, and I'm working all the time and busting my ass and getting like 1 ear of corn, I'm gonna stop doing that eventually.
Okay, so in the video, he made the point similar to this about a misperception about value, and that a person's return or income is a reflection of the value that they contribute. So if a CEO makes $50 million a year and an employee makes $50,000 a year, well, obviously the CEO is 1,000 times more valuable than a lower end employee.
Yeah, I
mean,
disagree. No, of course. I mean, and just like there's also people that are satisfied with making X amount of money, but could go to another company and make more, but they're okay with that, whatever amount it is, right? That pays for what they need. You know, some people are motivated by money. Some people are just motivated by getting by, right? So there's that whole dichotomy in there. And yes, I mean the CEOs. I mean, I don't know how many you guys know CEOs. They're not worth $100 million a year. I mean, their connections are, right. And if they're into processes and systems and they're really up on the technology and the industry they're in, yes. But there's a certain level where it just becomes political too, right? So they're in, you know, or whatever. But to say that, are they worth that to the company? I don't know. I mean, there's probably someone below them, a few pay stages that are more hungry, that could do as good a job for less. I mean, I don't understand. I think a lot of our CEO class kind of takes care of themselves to a degree. I mean, certainly, I'm not going to argue with that, but it's up to that business to decide, or their shareholders to decide, you know, what that value is.
Yeah, Tom?
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's tough to compare. You talk about the grass is greener over in Denmark and Norway. Maybe literally it is, but figuratively, it's tough to compare those countries to us because the size, like Germany, is about the size of Wisconsin physically, and these countries are so much smaller, more homogenous. The U.S. is so gigantic and diverse. It's very difficult for us to behave the way they do and to be controlled the same way they are. But I think the proof is really in the pudding. If you're trying to compare, okay, what's more successful, just look, okay, well, did Denmark and Sweden, did they come up with any great did they come up with Microsoft and computers, and did they come up with, you know, the smartphones, and did they invent all this stuff? Going back like 100 years, the automobiles and, you know, the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell, everything that we've come up with under our system of economics, have they even come close to what we've done?
The greatest thing, and to Tom's point, that, and I'm not an economist, but the greatest asset that the U.S. has had, at least throughout the 20th century, was the middle class. Like, we found out a way to give an enormous percentage of our population disposable income, and that disposable income provided incentive for other people, the Henry Fords, the whatever. Actually, Henry Ford helped create the middle class, but provided that incentive, that pocket, that pool of money for them to innovate and try to get, right? I mean, that's the money in this country is in the middle class. It's not, you could take all the money from Bezos and Bill Gates and all these guys, it would keep the lights on for like a day, right? It's not, it's like class warfare to focus on these guys. There's 350 million people in this country.
That's a good point. Even though there's a disparity, who's got the largest middle class and who's got the most affluent lower class? If you take our lower class and compare it to anybody else's lower class, our poor people are richer than every other poor people around the world.
And you have to have, I keep saying it, but you have to have a lower class to have a middle class and an upper class. You very good point, Tom, in that who has the best lower class? That's an interesting question I'd like to look into, because that's really the country that's.
We just talk economically, right? We don't have a caste system.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just economically, but yeah, I'd be interested in finding out, because that I would feel is probably, you know, one of the better places. One would argue it was probably Kuwait before everything happened over there, because apparently Kuwait was just, everybody was rich. Everybody had, like, you know, gallons and gallons of oil pumping
Again,
out.
a very small nation, kind of like Dubai or something.
But
it's tough to do that on a large scale.
The thing that to quote Family Guy, the thing that grinds my gears about when people talk about
Human nature.
government control versus like the market control. Even you're right. Even though, I mean, obviously the market's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Nothing is perfect, right? But the thing that gets me is this. It seems like in the last 20 years, maybe longer, we've gotten into this like government worship, right? Where the zeitgeist is like, oh, whoever's president, they understand electrical engineering, they understand electric cars, they understand climate change, they understand they have no freaking idea that most of the people who are in power in our government, Biden, Harris, Schumer, Pelosi, McConnell, these people have never held regular jobs. They have no freaking, they don't know how to change a tire on a car. They have no freaking idea. So to look to these people as if they are the oracles of what we should be doing it is like the emperor has no clothes. It is so absurd. Meanwhile, we have this whole other system, this market economy where it's fight to the death, bloodbath, like the victor wins and moves on, the better thing moves on. And we just say, oh, you know what? These people over here that have no idea what they're talking about, they need to tell these people what's going on. Oh, there we go. I mean, the government should provide the guardrails, in my opinion, and they need to be serious guardrails. But other than that, I don't know, man. I'm not calling up Camilla Harris and asking her like how I should be investing or something. I don't know.
How about something like
Better name now that we're gonna get watched.
you all have kids, right?
Yes, and they're mine.
Right. Do you think that it would have been helpful to have 6 months, a year off when your kids were born? Do you think that would help everyone? Do you think that would help society?
You know,
so what do you do to get there?
Them. Yeah.
So Germany does that. Poland does things similar to that. I'm not against that. I actually, you know what, for mental health alone, because you're not your most effective those
you're
6 months.
Yeah.
I took off like a month when my oldest was born. Yeah, I actually think that in the grand scheme of things, that is one that I could get behind. Is yes, when you have a kid, you're paid for like 6 months.
But here's the unintended consequence, and this gets into the disparity in pay between men and women. If I'm a business owner and I'm going to hire somebody, and I don't care if they're a man or woman at all, but it's a crucial, this person needs to be my right hand, right? I need to rely on them.
They don't take the job.
And it's a woman who's 25 years old, or it's a guy who's 25 years old. You got to be thinking they're going to, I mean, again, there is okay, we need to have them and pay them to be off for a year or 2 months. That's fantastic. Let's do that.
What if the woman's last name was Duger?
So
Duger. But to
like
pretend
17 kids and she's off for a year, like
but to
be off like
it has
constantly,
no
basically.
repercussions it's just putting your head in the sand.
Well, no. But here's my answer to that. When I go to I'm getting schools paid for where I work, right? That's to make me a better employee, more valuable, all that. Suckers. But anyway, if I quit or I get fired within a certain period of time, if I wasn't finished having everything paid off, they take it out of my check. I think you could apply the same principle to what we're talking about with children. If somebody gets pregnant and they signed a contract, look, I'll take ownership of this. So they could sign a contract. There could be, I will work. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be an end all be all, but it could be like a disability kind of thing. Well, FMLA kind of does it already.
Look, of course
you know what I'm saying? But that's taken out of your paid time off. I don't know if I feel great about that. I feel like Jason asked a really great question.
No, it's a great question, and anyone would say, of course, it's better for the parents to have off. I mean, 6 months, whatever.
That's all.
Of course, that's better. But there is a cost associated with that, and to say, well, the company should just provide it, and then to put your head in the sand and not see that there is there are other repercussions and other costs, and you just ignore those, that's where it starts to go kind of off the rails. I mean, there are companies that go out there to say, hey man, if you work for us, we're going to give you a year maternity leave, and they attract the higher level
Well,
people.
I mean,
And that's fine. I mean, they're making that decision to do
What if
that.
it was the government? What if everyone paid the way everyone pays for public education? So the burden wasn't placed on the business.
that's what I was getting at. Is they
Would
could
probably be more ideal. Yeah, because that's a society. There is a societal benefit to having parents, especially mothers, be able to spend time with their children. There's no question that's a societal benefit. I mean, that would be, yeah.
Oh, I mean, yeah, and that's more where I was going with it anyway, is you could also incentivize that, hey, if you can tough it out, one of you can work and the other one can't, maybe the from the government a subsidy or something. If the husband decides to work through that whole time, but the wife takes the time off, perhaps he's subsidized in his income, so it takes a little of the weight off of him. He doesn't have to work overtime. That's a really interesting, and I mean, I like the concept of it, and again, they're doing it in other countries. In Germany, like if you have if a woman has a child and it's out of wedlock, man, they're not hurting. They get a home. They
opposed to here.
What's that?
I said as opposed to
No,
here.
it's different. It's like it would be like your middle class. It wouldn't be welfare.
This is where you get into some social engineering. Like there's countries that have done things like that.
Are you encouraging?
I mean,
more babies.
Yes.
And people have done that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it works there. I know two people actually that have taken advantage of that situation, and they both work now. One of them is married. They got another kid, and they're working. It was just,
if you look here's the consequence.
No.
See, now, right, bad timing. I can't say what I'm going to say. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
We're talking about how you're a burden.
Bye, burden.
So here's the thing, right?
Oh, he's
so
a contribution to society.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Here's the thing. So I just agreed. I'm like, man, yep, that's a common good. It's society says, hey man, we need to help these people out with their babies. Common good. Okay, great. So now when you get to a situation where the government's like, man, we have way too many kids here. Like we can't support all these kids. Then you have a second kid and they come and they sterilize you like they did in China during the one child policy. So once you let the camel in, like, oh, it's good to have the government involved with family planning, right? But once they're like a robot, man. If the conditions change and they have the power, it's not like they're like, oh, we can't do that. That's how you end up with the one child policy, because now you're letting the bureaucracy decide what's best for family planning.
Weight on your soul.
So it's like, what's worse? Like, is it okay? Like, is it a bummer that I can't spend a full month with my newborn kid? I got to go back to work in a week, or is it worse that I have a second child and my wife gets taken away in the night and their uterus cut out? Like, what's worse?
the rule in China? If you're rich in China, can you have 5 kids or?
Well, it's over now. It ended.
Oh,
it
okay.
ended back in like 97 or something.
Oh, but hey,
like
don't
that.
worry. There's still other countries where they just take the girl child out into the middle of the desert and bury them. So
I mean,
it's still going
Spartans.
on.
That's
The
the
other
Spartans
thing-
used to do that.
The other thing in this country with the whole idea of like taking time off, it's like I always look back in history, like my dad was one of 6 kids. His mom died when he was like 2, so my grandfather raised these kids in like a townhouse in Philly, West Philly. How in the hell did he do that, man? That's like crazy. So the thing is, he had a support network, right? So he belonged to a church. He had people in the church. He had sisters and brothers that lived like 2 blocks away. His parents lived like blocks away, whatever. So he was part of an immigrant community, and they all that doesn't exist right now. Like it does in small cases and with new immigrants, But now it's like we have people, you know, when my child was born, my parents are in Florida, my sister's in Massachusetts, I'm in Maryland, like everyone's spread out. And then we're like, whoa, we need some help with this. Well, okay, is the problem that we need the government to jump in, or we need businesses to jump in to support, or is the problem that we fractured our multi-generational family structure where we don't want to talk to each other and we're spread out all over the place now? Like, which is the problem? I don't know. I mean, it's a rhetorical question,
I
but
think we found Darcy's replacement.
No, it's a valid point. I mean, we evolved over tens and hundreds of thousands of years in little tribal units. We're supposed to be together in close-knit communities, and we're not. And even Tom's talking about countries that are more communal in nature. They're smaller and they have similar cultures, and so I think there's certainly something to be said there.
So and to that, yeah, we Americans, we are unique in the fact that, man, if our parents over 60 and they start falling down, man, we don't keep them at home. We put them into a building with a bunch of other people that keep falling down all over the place and have kids that dump them. You go to Japan, you go to Poland, people live 5 minutes away. That is something that, again, maybe we could incentivize something where that'd be hard because we're kind of nomadic within our country. But I mean, that would be something interesting to incentivize if you know, childcare through family. If a family member does it, you could subsidize things like that. I like the idea of those kind of things where you're supporting unity. I mean, because that's something this country needs badly right now.
So
valuing the family.
Are we kind of now saying that such severe individualism is bad, and we ought to feel a little bit more solidarity to fellow Americans, and perhaps that ought to motivate us for more, be it federal or state or local government involvement?
Yeah, the more local your you know, group is, whether it be your family, whether it be your community, your local town, whatever, the more central, the more close that is, the more power you have as an individual within that group. I think within my family, I have an amazing amount of power, right? I'm one of only a few people. In the United States, I'm one of 350 million, right? My say is much more watered down.
We're coming across some really interesting concepts this episode. I'm really liking this because, yeah, I do think I'm not saying that you should be forced to stay there, but again, if things were incentivized a little more for positive, forward, you know, progressive thought processes, not handouts, but again, incentives. If grandma is taking care of the kids and she's retired, so she gets an extra $1.50 in the old Social Security check or whatever. You know, I mean, there could be something to that. We're certainly not doing it right now.
And then I'll take a break from talking for a minute. But this, like, if you remember back, I won't even get into that. So I think there is a kind of known way to handle things, like having the next generation of kids, having the older generations around, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. That's beneficial. I don't think there's any society that would deny that. However, there's a lot of people that don't have that, right? So do we help provide, you know, some kind of safety net for those people? I'm totally for that. I don't know what that looks like. The difference is, do you look at that as a safety net and as like a temporary thing to help people that need it? Or do you look at that as like, that's the way things should be? And I feel like at least in the United States, we're like, you don't need the older generation. We'll take care of you, like as though that's the preferred method. And I think that's where things really go downhill fast, because it's not sustainable, and it's a devaluation of the family and of the older way of doing things. That's old. That's in the past. We don't do that anymore.
Well, how about this?
I don't need a father. I can have a baby by myself. What are you against single family or single mother situations? I was raised by a single mother, not me. I'm just saying people say this. And it's like, of course that can work. Is it ideal? Is that what we should be striving for?
There's some people it might be.
I don't know. Is that the goal? Is the goal to be a single mother parent or not?
It
I don't.
doesn't, statistically, it doesn't work.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not ideal.
It needs to be both. It needs to be, look, our history has shown this is probably a better idea. However, things happen. Get that. So we have this over here for you. But it's not like, hey, this is what you need to be shooting for, right? And I know I'm being like very general, but
Well, we're right talking about people we know loosely. Like I know people that are like, oh well, you should get you should get divorced so one of you can be on welfare, and what I mean. But you both stay together and work. Like there are people that take advantage of the system, and that's what makes it so hard.
There always will be, but you can't make policy based on that. There's always going to be that.
Yeah, I know. But
I don't have a problem with that. With those programs. My issue is when those programs become enshrined as the preferred or as the what you're shooting for. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's like Fix-A-Flat's a great product, right? But I don't want to use it. I like it that it's there if I need it. I'm not like, let me run over this nail so I can use my Fix-A-Flat.
Part of what you were saying also, there's other things that are valued in keeping families close. Like, just for instance, I don't know my father. Don't know him. Like, literally don't know him.
Mm-hmm.
I could have congenital heart disease. I could need, bone marrow. Like, there's lots of benefits to
Huge.
and just the passing on, I know you kind of touched on it, but I mean, it really needs to be said that the passing on of information, the experiences that my dad had, affect me. My dad, I think I've told some of you, I got like burnt on the face and the hand when I was a kid. We were out in the bayous in Louisiana, right? My dad swam through the bayous, alligator like infested waters, to get me to somewhere so they could get an ambulance. And
wow.
I'm not saying that I have the capability to do that, but that principle was impressed upon me, and I'll impress it upon my son. Sometimes you got to take big risks to do the right thing. And were I not to have that relationship with my father to be able to pass down to my son, who knows? So it is huge to have family.
It's huge.
And we're not doing it. I live states away from my family by design, but it's just too squirrely all the time. But I mean, I think we all do that. Like I said, we're kind of nomadic within our own country. We don't stay in one place. It's uncomfortable. We feel like we can run away from our problems, that our girl problems are suddenly going to be different if we move to Florida because they wear bikinis. But we're still going to be assholes to them. We didn't change us. We changed our locale. But that's what I got to say about that. So what else we got here?
If the Revolutionary Corps come by and the Revolutionary Corps for the Civil War come by and knock on your door and say, all right, we're splitting up. We're not necessarily going to fight and kill each other over it, but we're definitely splitting the country up.
But we'll probably kill each other over it.
Probably, but magically, it doesn't happen. You can pick where to live. You're either going to go pick on the side that's going to govern itself with strictly libertarian principles, or you can pick the states that are going to do the sort of mixed economy, the market, the market economy with the social programs.
Probably the market economy. I like the idea of being able to go to the top or
well, they're both market economies. Just one redistributes some the wealth via taxation and government programs for healthcare, childcare, whatever have you, whereas the other one relies upon the market for the same functions.
There's definitely a role. I mean, in other words, look, so the states originally, our country, United States, they came together. These are very smart people, and they,
That was our country, by the way. Thank you.
what? And they created, the states created the federal government, not because they were bored, but because they saw a need for it. The common defense, regulating things between the states, common currency, things along those lines. Absolutely, there's a need for a centralized government. It's no, I don't know that any reason people argue that. But when it gets to be like, when that organization becomes this monolithic controlling force, I think that's where people start to have an issue. And I think it's a misnomer to say, if you are against this overwhelming centralized force, that you're against having a centralized federal government. That's not the choice to me. I mean, I do want a centralized government. I just don't want it to come to my door and ask me if I got vaccinated, if I can avoid it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you got to
Yeah.
let people keep what they earn. If you tax too much, if you take away what people earn and redistribute it, then people aren't going to have the incentive to work hard.
I'd be
And
salty.
that's really going to chop off
Well-
going to just chop the legs off of everybody.
Well, back to Jason's question though, about which government would you
Right, that gets-
choose? And it kind of goes to what Mike was saying about what is the role of centralized government. We've talked about different social programs here tonight, as far as paternity leave and benefiting single parenthood and all that stuff. I guess my issue would be, what are the social programs that I'm being taxed on as I try to work with the free market? And that's a big problem with the current system, I think, is like, where does my money go? And that's the appeal of the libertarian country, I would think, is that you control your own money. Like even these homogenized countries that are doing so well, that Bernie says are communist countries, but they're not. They have to pay, like when you buy stuff, you have to pay something called a VN tax, I think it's called, Jason. Where
Yeah, like
you
a value added.
yeah, where you're paying for like the tax toward the manufacturing of whatever it was that you bought, as opposed to just paying either a sales tax, or like in Florida, you pay sales tax, but you don't pay state income tax. So you basically are taxed on what you spend, which is why a lot of people love moving there when they get old. So the libertarian part of the country is scary, because like Zeus said, and I think we all agree, there's social programs you want as like a safety net. It doesn't even have to be to take 6 months off when your wife has a kid. It could just be, shit, I'm gonna have 6 months off because I just got fired. Like there's like a social program that helps you get employed, I'm all for. But all this other malarkey, a lot of it I'm not. Oh, look at Zeus. He just came out of
Yeah.
what's his name, space. Yeah, so I don't know, Jason, to answer your question, I don't know which one I'd pick if they came with guns and said, what are you gonna wear, the blue or the gray?
I look
You
better
know?
in blue.
Yeah, I look better in
I
blue.
kind of like having a lot of options, and that's why I like more local control. So the reason why
Yeah.
Florida gets a lot of old people is because Florida's tax structure benefits old people. So they get
Right.
more old people down there
Are
for
you
whatever
thinking it's
reason.
a chicken or egg thing, though? I think that Florida is good for the weather is good for their health.
The problem with Florida is it does not have as many jobs per square. Like, if where my parents live in Central Florida, they moved down there about 12 years ago. They're retired, and the area that they live in, there's not a lot of jobs for people like us, right? But if you're retired, it's fantastic. And Florida has a lot of places like that. I like having
Florida,
variety.
Florida's all tourism.
A lot of it is, yeah. But
But-
I'm just saying, if you're a doctor who specializes in geriatric care, Florida's fantastic. If you're a doctor that specializes in, OBGYN, probably not so good. Probably not a place you're going to go to.
Oh no, they get knocked up all the time down there.
I personally like the idea of having a variety of things, and that's why I'm so anti strong centralized overseeing government, because it takes away the choices. I mean, the fact is, if I want to be in a certain incentivized system, I can go do that. Now, I know that there's people that make the argument of, like, what kind of getting back to what Jason's saying, economic opportunity and being able to move. A lot of people can't just move. And I get that, I mean, there needs to be a baseline. But I look at the diversity of how states are run as a benefit, not as a, I like the fact that there's 50 different gun laws and 50 different tax laws. And to me, that's a benefit. I don't see that as a negative, but that's just me.
If I may go back to something you said, Mike, I disagree on the Florida thing. I really do think that it is more of a chicken egg situation. I think that Florida is probably more accommodating to the geriatric community because they moved there due to health reasons.
Yeah, too.
And that that's why it's the way it is. It's a no fault state. There's no state tax. Very old school kind of concepts. Interesting thing that we could touch on too is it's interesting that, like, say you move to like Wisconsin Dells, whatever, somewhere where it's less expensive and the cost of living is lower, but so is the pay. We do often find ourselves in these situations. Like, if I could move to Florida right now and I'd be great, but moving back to Virginia, unless I keep my house up here and all that, it's unlikely. Unless I'm going to prosper far more than I needed to here, I'm going to be stuck in Florida. And that's something that is interesting about that, like, state-run, the little intricacies with the governments, because it's harder to move to Virginia from Florida by far than it is to move from Virginia to Florida. So there is a little bit of inequity there. I mean, look at us with the whole housing bubble living in this area, in the Virginia area. I didn't feel it, man. I did okay. My job, I had a job, all that. When, like 10 years ago, when everybody was freaking out about the economy and all, we were insulated here.
Absolutely. Back in 07, 08, I had a company that totally hit the shoals, just destroyed construction company. This was like in 08, my partner and I was living up in Baltimore, like just and our business was north of Baltimore. And it was horrible. And then I got a job with a large company and I was working on high rises in DC. And I would drive down to DC, and there would be, like, as you approach, there'd be like 16 cranes that you could see on the horizon. It was not like that in Baltimore. It was not like that in Philadelphia. It was not like that anywhere. DC is definitely an insulated, the growth during 08 in this area, the DC area that I'm in now, was phenomenal. Everywhere else, it sucked ass.
As is Southern Maryland and, Chevy Chase, the surrounding parts. Like here in Northern Virginia, there was no... It was like
a speed bump.
It's the government, because the government doesn't go out of business. All the governments
people complain and crying about it, and I mean, to be honest, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Things are great.
Tom made a fantastic point. The government isn't going out of business.
No.
They're not going to run out of money. They're not going to run out of time. There's a reason why Fairfax County has the highest per capita income of any county in the entire country.
We need a revolution.
I guess
Not in Fairfax County, you don't.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I
only
think
the little people do it.
my final question about all this is: has anyone heard of the negative income tax?
I think you were talking to me about this, but I ignored you because it was boring.
It's an
get money
old
back?
idea. That's pretty much what it is, except it's some think it's like a universal basic income, but it's not. It's basically people on the lower end of the spectrum get will end up getting some percent beneath an allotted decided amount based on what they do make. And the intent is to pretty much replace most, if not all, social programs. Certainly anything in the welfare category, housing assistance, food stamps, anything like that. So, and there are a lot of questions, but basically, if you said, okay, 30,000 is 30,000 a year is the limit, and 50% is going to be the negative income tax. If you made 20,000 that year, then half of the remaining amount, that 10,000, the IRS would send you a check for 5. If you made 10,000, they'd send you a check for 10,000 because half of 20 is 10. If you made 29,000, they'd send you a check for $500. So there's a continual incentive that no matter how much you work, whether it's 10 hours or 1,000 hours in a year, you're always going to end up with more money.
I don't know.
Unless you make 30,000,
Unless
Yeah.
you make, well,
then
no,
all you get is the
30,000.
30,000.
30,000, you pay 0%, and you keep
That
all your
sucks.
money.
What's
And
the
then you-
incentive to work up to get a job that pays 30,000?
Well, because no matter how much you work, you're always going to be getting more. If
You're
you
always gonna
work,
be getting more money.
yep. If you earn 10,000 by your work, you'll get 10,000 from the
So-
government.
Isn't there
But
going
the
to
less you get paid more, the less you work.
You get more from the government, but your total, you net more at the end of the year.
but
so
aren't you
you
going
s-
to have inflation issues? I mean, with any of these, guaranteed basic income, and Jason, I've never heard of this before. I'm just thinking about it. But aren't you going to have inflationary repercussions from any sort of thing like this? Where
It's very possible. Inflate. It's not like you're not necessarily creating more money, so it's not going to create an inflation that way. It would probably be more likely to generate greater GDP, and you'd be
stuff.
there'd be you'd be the government. You'd be spending less money on the government. The government. I mean, you'd be closing down entire branches of government. So you'd get back closer to the principle, as you like, of a central government that's more in line with its core functions in the Constitution, and away from these programs, while still acknowledging that it's beneficial to society to have a safety net without it having to be administered by paid bureaucrats.
I'll think about it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't know.
I think if the aliens come, I'll take the anal probe and get off this fucking shit heap.
It's not.
Yeah, we know you will, Zeus.
You still got to work.
I
someday.
Anal probe either way.
Yeah, I was gonna say you were not even gonna wait for the aliens to come.
All right.
You've been
Honestly,
practicing.
this
Yeah.
this episode has been really, really creative and interesting, but it's so overwhelming. Like, we could do this all day long, talk about how we could change things, and it just gets
I love-
frustrating.
Be the change, Zeus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
be the change you
Be
want to
the
see in the
change.
world.
I'd love to change the world, but I don't know what to do.
Thank you. Your lips, God's ears, Jack.
No,
What
that
do
was
you-
my.
Your kid's
that was
been
like,
walking across the back of the screen the whole episode.
God, what band was that?
What's that?
I'd love to change the world, but I don't know what to do. Is that Three Dog Night?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I was gonna go more with "Stop the World." I want to get off. I don't know what band that is, but
Stop the world and melt with you.
I was just gonna go there.
Yeah, sorry.
like-
I think we're tweetering out.
We almost made it. We almost made it.
Well, that's all I got. So
No,
I think that was compelling, Jason.
Good
I mean,
show.
a lot of stuff to think about.
and like thoughts I hadn't thought about, like incentivizing. I mean, we do incentivizing, but maybe we're doing it the wrong way. Maybe I think there's a lot of incentives that somebody at the top of they're validating their job and they're getting paid more because they incentivize something that looks good at first, but then shits the bed, 10 years down the road. I like the idea of, helping everybody to prosper. Like when we were talking about, allowing people to have some time off with kids. I think that like mental health wise is an amazingly good idea. I'm not talking welfare. I'm not talking it's okay to have kids and then, just depend on the government forever and just have another kid because that worked out well the first time.
Get more money.
I like the idea of helping, giving people a hand up. Now, that's what they say they're doing now, but I don't think they are. I think they're just making the problems worse. This will sound barbaric, but I'm probably, do any of you guys give like money to like homeless people, like you're at the 7-Eleven or
Not in a while.
Maybe,
what's that?
maybe a cigarette. Maybe a cigarette.
Yeah, see, I don't at all. And it's not from a place of cruelty. I really firmly believe that me giving, $10 to that guy that's standing in front of the 7-Eleven that I know is going to go in there and buy beer, I'm not helping him on any level. In fact, I'm worsening his problem. And buying him the meal, I've done that. And you know what they do? They look at you like, that's not what I was looking for.
No, that's like the whole mental health episode again. Those people are fucking.
But not all of them. Some of them are just.
They're a little, well, there's grifters. There's grifters.
Yeah, there's a guy. Oh my God, I know this sounds bad, but it infuriates me. I went to the 7-Eleven right before the show, and the guy goes, and they're sitting there and they look at you, and you can tell that they're kind of going, this guy's a soft touch, right?
Yeah, they're sizing you up.
And he's like, can you give me a Pepsi? And I was like, and I heard that, and then he goes, please. And I was like, all right. Don't even look at me when I come out. The whole 12-year-old boy, please, can I have some ice cream tone in your voice just got you a hungry night. I can't do it. I don't know.
Didn't he know they have free Slurpees right now?
Anywhere, dude. Yeah.
That's something.
Wow.
I'm like, dude, just walk in there, get a free Slurpee. It's 7-Eleven's anniversary, for God's sake.
And you see the guys in the 7-Eleven and they're looking at these guys walking back and forth, and they're just irritated too. It's like it's very bothersome.
Here, I have a short anecdote. Just thinking about when I lived up in Baltimore, back in this is probably like 2000, 1999, something. Or Martin O'Malley was the mayor of Baltimore City at the time. I had a house in Baltimore City and Hamilton, and very modest house, very working class area. I think the house value was like 160,000 or 150,000. So the ACLU had filed suit against Baltimore because Baltimore had started blowing up public housing like decades earlier and like eliminating it.
Move the people.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they got the people out first. Yes.
No, Zeus. They only moved the headstones.
They only moved the headstones, and so
move the bodies.
They were suing because they were saying that the city had to make sure that this public housing was being dispersed throughout the city. And the neighborhood I lived in was like right near the top of neighborhoods they wanted to put a lot of these homes into. And of course, people were like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I remember going to these meetings like at the school, and hundreds of people would be there. And there'd be like lawyers from the ACLU that came down from New York that were like talking down their nose to us. There's Martin O'Malley there talking down his nose to us. And I got up to the microphone and I was like, you know, you guys are absolutely right. We need, things are horrible here. We need to start putting these houses in Roland Park and, you know, over there by on Charles Street, like where all the politicians and the wealthy people live. Of course, no one was making any arguments about putting these homes over there. So I've always been suspicious of people that have these solutions that the downside, they always kind of keep themselves out of the downside, you know, of it. And that has proven true in my experience over the years, that I see that same sort of, you know, situation develop.
It all comes down to lawyers. I mean, hey, raise your hand if you hate lawyers, guys.
Depends where I am in the courtroom. I've loved some lawyers.
I'm just saying they're dirty people.
Oh, fuck off.
All right, so we feel like there. I just saw a head pop by again.
Yep. Well,
He makes me think of Jim Carrey. Remember those old bits where Jim Carrey would be like, they'd be holding the interview in the front, and Jim Carrey would be like rowing a boat by or something.
Yeah.
He's walking up. Tom's just like pushing his head out of the way. That's on film, by the way, Tom. If anybody asks.
Yeah, we got you.
All right.
It's
well,
abusive.
guys, I got to head out.
All right.
All right, Jason.
All right,
Take care,
Jason.
man.
Okay, good
All right.
episode.
So,
Good job.
Good
Yeah,
talking to you
I'm
guys.
rolling out soon too.
Absolutely.
Take care, man.
Yeah, good.
You too.
Good. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. What do we say, Jack?
I think we've been on for a while, boys. I think it's time we got to wrap this up.
All right. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye-bye.